extraordinary. It was in the centenary year after the Titanic had sunk. A major exhibition came to Manchester. I've been living up there for about 40 years in the northwest. So I'd gone to the exhibition, and I happened to mention it in conversation to my mother that I'd been to this very interesting exhibition, and she said, just checking, I think, that I did know I had a relative who died on the Titanic. Well, it was the first I'd heard of it. I had no idea at all, and I assumed she meant he was a passenger. But then I was in for a surprise that no, he wasn't a passenger. He was one of the ship's crew. He was a doctor on board. But when I asked for more information, she didn't even have his name. She had no information about him beyond that he was a doctor aboard the Titanic. And as a result of being a member of the Rogues Chorus, we got the opportunity, if we wanted to take it up, to join in a group doing a project at the Seagull Theatre. And many of the people who live in the Lowestoft area might have somebody who's either been a fisherman or a lifeboatman or some such like. And so somewhere in their background they may have lost a relative. So for a moment I was at sea, because I thought, well, no, I don't have any relative like that. But then I remembered my relative who'd died on the Titanic. And I said to Mary, I said, by the way, do you have any information on this relative who died on the Titanic? Oh yes, she said brightly. Do you want to see his obituary? And I couldn't believe it. And she just popped up, and within seconds, she was down immediately. She knew where all the paperwork was. She came down, and there were the actual newspaper cuttings, the originals. And that was more like a couple of years ago, and only very recently I asked her how was it that they came into her possession, and had my cousins, that is her children, had they done any research? And she said no, they'd done no research at all. And that she just found the papers when her mother died, which my mother's mother. So yeah, it would appear that his memory hasn't been kept alive within the family at all. So I'm absolutely determined to change this.
Well, 1,600 went down below to dwell.
So his full name was Dr. William Francis Norman O'Loughlin. So he'd actually been born in Ireland. His date of birth was October the 17th in 1849. He wasn't just merely a ship's doctor, as my mother had suggested. He started off in the White Star Line at the age of 21, and he'd actually been at sea with them for over 40 years, and he'd risen through the ranks to be the chief surgeon of the entire White Star Line. And before he was on the Titanic, he was on the Olympic, but he was with the same captain, and the captain transferred from the Olympic to the Titanic. And in actual fact, Dr. O'Loughlin, he didn't actually want to leave the Olympic. He felt, apparently, at his stage in life, he was tired of moving ships, and he would have been happy to stay with the Olympic. And apparently when he went to the captain and told him that he didn't really wish to make the change, apparently Captain Smith somewhat chided him and told him he was being lazy and told him to pack his bags and come with him. But having got the actual original obituaries of many press cuttings, one can actually quote from them as well. But apparently he was inclined to look on the bright side of things always. So although he hadn't actually wanted to go onto the Titanic, I guess no doubt he was encouraged, to enjoy her splendour. So apparently, according to Steward Thomas Whiteley, on one of the occasions when he was dining with Captain Smith and Bruce Ismay, who was a representative of the White Star Company, apparently he rose and lifting his glass he exclaimed, "Let us drink to the mighty Titanic." With cries of approval, everybody stood up and drank the toast. And then after the collision, apparently he spoke to one of the stewardesses, and a very sort of Catholic type of phrase, I think, "Child," he said, "things are very bad." And apparently as the water reached up to sea deck, he was standing with some of the other officers and the assistant surgeon. And the last person to have seen him alive was Chief Baker Charles Jockin, who, it was actually April the 15th that most people died. A few people will have died on April the 14th, but it was the collision was before midnight, but it was a few hours later that most people died. And apparently Dr. O'Loughlin was noticed searching for something in the early hours of the morning, and given that Charles Jockin had been looking for some alcohol, he rather assumed that maybe my relative was doing something similar. he was also known to have said that although he had the opportunity to have a life jacket, because although there was a shortage of lifeboats, I don't think there was a shortage of life jackets, but apparently he said he didn't think he would be needing that, so I don't think he wore one. So his body was either never recovered, or if it was recovered, he wasn't identified. But one of the lovely things after he had died, if I was to quote from here, it is a pleasure to know that of the many memorials which are to be raised in connection with the Titanic disaster, the popular Irish physician O'Loughlin is not to be forgotten. In him, the White Star Company lost the doyen of their medical service, their loved Commodore, one of the most lovable of men. Although well advanced in years, which I object to, he was only 62 and I'm 63. He wasn't well advanced in years. Although well advanced in years and still at work, don't forget, Dr. O'Loughlin was full of the ardour of youth. He knew no dull moments and always looked at the bright side of things.